It is an honor to sit this morning with Mr. Dennis Mc Comie, a trustee. Yes, good morning, Mr. Mc Comie. It's wonderful to have you here with us this morning as we talk about this, and wonderful to have you for so many reasons. But this is a conversation, and I dare say something that went from being swept under the carpet to becoming trending to being swept under the carpet again. And seeing the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago come together with your foundation to bring awareness and also to make some announcements is such a monumental move.
National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, no, remarkable. Before we go anywhere else, I have to really big them up because they're relatively new. And to be new in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly under the circumstances of 3 years of pandemic and depression and low self-esteem, etc., it's remarkable because it's, I think, the most distinctive and most distinguished work that we've ever accomplished in the last few decades. To have a National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, an organization that is professional and efficient and looking after the patrimony of Trinidad and Tobago, it's absolutely wonderful because that's what we need to do. We need to impress upon the young ones how remarkably rich and beautiful their heritage is. And heritage is everything. Heritage is the food you like, the people you associate with, your belief in your religious belief, your cultural movements, your music, your conversation. That is your heritage, and it's all that matters, because family is all in there as well, Beautiful old buildings, lovely natural lands, like Belmont. We try to get Belmont named National Heritage District because it's so old and so historic.
Yeah, that's so true.
Big up for the National Trust.
Big up to the National Trust.
We really appreciate the partnership.
And it's wonderful to see it because, of course, as you mentioned, heritage, and something that is so important is also the movements against AIDS in Trinidad and Tobago. So now seeing this collaboration, can you tell us a bit about the collaboration between National Trust and Artists Against AIDS?
Well, they have come up with the idea, and they were the ones that came up with the idea of actually associating with an organization to observe World AIDS Day, which is Thursday, the 1st of December. So they have come up with the idea of having a 5-day exhibition at Mille Fleurs, which is the headquarters of the National Trust. And they heard that we had officially closed. When you say closed, legally you have to sign these papers. You can't just close an NGO down like that, you have to go to the banks, you have to go to the lawyers, you have to sign off, etc. So Mr. Miguel Pinero, who's the other trustee, and I have spent 2 years trying to officially close Artists Against AIDS. But what we want to do on Monday is to just literally celebrate all of the beautiful artists of Trinidad and Tobago who have contributed their skills in whatever way, all the way over 39 years. Now we've been an NGO for 25, but we've worked for the general public for 39 years.
Wow.
And in 1981, nobody wanted to talk about AIDS. They didn't even call it AIDS. They called it GRID.
Yeah.
And it had just started impacting the Caribbean, so that there was terrible prejudice and discrimination. It was like, kill all Haitians. Monkeys are the ones that gave it to us, and all of this horrible nonsense and prejudice, all based on fear.
Yeah.
Fear and doubt and worry. Not even government was interested in talking about this new disease. And look, we have another pandemic.
We do.
Who thought that we were going to have Ebola, and now this?
I know.
So it's gonna continue happening, and you're going to have to be brave to be able to deal with it as it comes.
We do have to be brave, and I think that's one theme that resonated and one feeling that resonated among your organization and all of the artists as well, being so brave, because as you just mentioned, starting at a time where nobody wanted to hear about it, there was so much prejudice, to being able to watch society in many ways blossom into acceptance, with admittedly a bit of people still, perhaps shoo-shooing at times, but now to come full circle and say that it's time to come to a close. Can you share with us why it's time to come to a close?
We have died from the pandemic and total exhaustion, my dear, because after 39 years, artists, you're just, doing it free all the time, and that's another thing. I want to appeal to Trinidad and Tobago to really appreciate and recognize that their heritage, their art, their culture, their music, the personality that we have as Trinis, that is what's going to save us from all of this nonsense. And I'm talking about economic and financial issues and all of the issues that politicians like to talk about. Climate change and the environment, all of that is heritage.
It is heritage.
And we have to start liking ourselves and realizing how remarkably valuable we are as human beings, individuals and communities. Trinidad and Tobago people are remarkable people. The artists are the ones who made this NGO live for 39 years. Rosemary Pinero Perkins and her husband Michael Perkins were the protector of the quilt. We haven't talked about the quilt, but
Not
one
yet.
of the things that came out of the work from Artists Against It is that we established with the rest of the countries around the world a quilt. And they have these huge quilts that could cover football fields and stuff. And our little committee said, no, we can't do that. So let's make it 13 inches, 1 inch to sew into the fabric, so that it will end up being a 12-inch square.
Okay.
So we have the smallest quilt in the world.
But we have a quilt.
But we have the quilt, and it's, I think, the most beautiful.
I can only imagine. In fact, that was my next question to you, talking about this quilt, because again, there was a time where globally we saw everybody very much invested in it. We didn't have, you know, Instagram and all these things back then, but we had television and we had radio, and that was just enough to learn. So knowing now that this quilt is also going to be on display, how does that feel after doing all the work?
I haven't seen it for 8 years.
Yeah.
And there was a big drama around a mystery of it disappearing for 2.5. Literally nobody in Artists Against AIDS knew where it was. So it's just reappeared, and we are trying to repair it and refurbish it, sanitize it.
Yeah, very important.
And it's now 9 panels.
Yeah.
It started with just 1, and now there are 9 panels with representing at least 2,000 citizens who have passed away from HIV/AIDS, and also artists who have worked in the organization.
Wonderful.
So it's a wonderful emotional moment. You know, you are all invited. Everybody in Trinidad and Tobago is invited to come between 10 and 4 in the afternoon for the next 5 days, 28th of November to the 2nd of December, Mille Fleurs around the Savannah, headquarters of the National Trust. Just have your moments, you know, free of charge.
Is there, I was just about to ask as well, is there any cost attached to it? Because, you know, normally with these things, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
There'll be a
for many.
little box there saying thank you for your donations, you know, but it's up to you to do what you want to do. And anything that goes into the box will go to the National Trust so that they can actually maintain the exhibition.
As somebody who's been with Artists Against AIDS for so long, how does it feel to witness not just the local transition, but the global transition from dealing with so much prejudice to now it becomes more like an everyday thing?
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
It's all worth it, because our great goal was to try to influence the young people. You know, we had already thought, okay, the old people are set. But the young people needed to have responsibility for their own sexuality. And you know, it's a very funny age to be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You're in doubt and about all kinds of things. And, you know, with social media and all of this remarkable impact that you have with information, you have to actually decide what's true and what's not true, and what's real and what's beautiful and what's ugly. There's so much ugliness in the world that you need to actually seek truth and beauty in everything you do to be able to come out of it alive, you know. So we're glad that we're actually impacting a lot of young people who are now taking it for granted, but we don't mind, you know.
Yeah.
If you take it for granted, you find out what the truth is about something, and then you know how to deal with it. It doesn't matter how simple or how heavy, you have to actually get the truth. And from there you can you can develop, you know, you can grow and you know, empower yourself, you know, reach your full potential. And I want all the kids in Trinidad and Tobago to save the world.
Yeah.
And through the environment, responsibility for each other, and effective communications. I always put that in because I'm a broadcaster. I'm sitting in a historic studio. This
Yes,
is where several of you had to lie down for days. In 1990, one or two of them are still behind the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
It's a miracle.
And it's wonderful to hear your faith and your love for Trinidad and Tobago, because many times people don't voice it. They just tend to say, well, you know, we'll pick and choose what we want, but don't see the energy and the essence of Trinbagonians and what we have to offer and how much power that lies within ourselves.
You have to not stop your joy, because the joy and the pain happen simultaneously.
They do.
So you have to accept the light and the shade.
Agreed.
And don't let yourself be overwhelmed by all the trouble, because there's a lot of trouble
There is a lot of trouble.
But you have to also remind yourself with a balance that there's, you know, you have to believe in God.
That is true.
I told him I'd put that in at least once today in this interview, you know.
Well, you have put it in, and I can't believe that we are almost out of time, because there is so much depth to what you are saying, because you have seen, you have witnessed, and now to, of course, see your foundation come to a close is definitely the end of an era and
Yes.
the opening
Very
of something brand
very
new.
emotional to me.
I can only imagine.
I think I could just barely do this one. I'm not doing any more interviews.
Well, we are thankful that you opted to do this one with us. It's happening at Mille Fleurs, and it's called Remembrance and Thanksgiving.
Remembrance
Correct?
and Thanksgiving. We want to just literally be able to big up all of the artists who still are here with us, some of them alive, you know, older, but we just want to say thanks, because that's really the best thing we can do. We can't pay you for what you did, you know. There's no way we could ever have been paid for what we did, and it's a thankless job, but to look back and still be alive and know that we did all this work, it's a wonderful feeling.
It is a wonderful feeling, and we are so thankful that you are here with us this morning, and looking forward to attending the exhibition. Trinidad and Tobago, you heard this from Mr. Mc Comie. Please go and take a look at the exhibition, see the transition of Trinidad and Tobago artists over time and the work that they did tirelessly and thanklessly for our nation.
Right, that's the logo. Can you pick this up, Nicholas? Pick this up.
There you go.
That's us.
That's them.
Okay.
Artists
Last
Against
look.
AIDS.
You won't see this again too often, I don't think.